Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video 211, Forgiveness and Vengeance, a little bit from a spiritual perspective, sort of, from the perspective of someone that believes in spiritual forces of various paranormal kinds, sort of the interplay between these two things. Now, first, to the philosophy of it. I think forgiveness is a virtuous thing, but I also think that being vengeful can be a virtuous thing. It really depends on the situation. First thing you've got to ask yourself is your vengeful feeling, which is natural, I don't believe in suppressing it, is it legitimate? Is your grievance against a person or a thing, does it make any sense? Like for instance, you stub your toe on a rock, you kick the rock or something. Well, it really makes no sense. You might stub your toe again, number one, fuck yourself. Number two, it's an inanimate object. It's like it's your own fault that you fucking tripped over, you idiot. So you've got a little bit of that. You've got to first sit back. Relieving yourself of bias is a big part at this point of my spiritual and political practice alike. Because you can't analyze politics properly unless you can put your bias at least to the side. Everyone has bias. Like within politics, I generally approve of the job Trump's doing. I lean heavily towards probably voting for him again. But I have to take a step back. I can't allow that to influence my analysis. Otherwise, I might be misconstruing things. I might be painting too rosy a picture of the person I've begun to support. I'd rather be right than basically comfort myself in being wrong. The same is true of spirituality or behavior and philosophy in general. You have to take a step back first, and you have to ask yourself if your feelings of wanting to be vengeful or hold a grudge or whatever, or even your desire to forgive someone make any sense in the situation. Some people are too forgiving. I have this problem at times. At certain times, I have a tendency to forget wrongs that are done to me very, very quickly. Unless they are very, very substantial, in which case you get over that tipping point, I go in the other direction. Total other direction. I'm like, fuck yourself, basically. Otherwise, 90% of the time, I'm like, if somebody wrongs me, like somebody says something insulting or something, I might feel bad for a minute, and then I'm like, why do I even feel bad? Because it gets to the point where it's just an impediment in your life, that you have this dark shadow hanging over you, this rain cloud raining upon you, and it's just like, well, I mean, if they continue to feel that way, and they're not just, maybe they accidentally pissed you off, in which case it's not reasonable to hold a grudge because they didn't mean it. If they do mean to insult you and make you feel bad, well, you're letting them win. Why the hell would you want to do that? You have to keep that in mind as well. Ultimately, though, there are certain cases, though, that I feel people, they can be forgiven, but it's like you don't really forget about it, or rather, you forget about it, you're not really passively recalling it, but you don't actively forgive them. You're like, enough is enough. Like, let's say that you have someone in your life. It could be a significant other, a parent, other relative, a friend, an acquaintance, a business associate, a fellow employee or something. They do something that's like really totally out there, like way beyond the pale as far as pissing you off, trying to destroy your life. They've wronged you in a way that goes beyond the normal. It's not like just like, well, you had a fight, they said mean things to you. It's more like you have a total falling out. It's like, this is the end, that's all, don't fucking talk to me again, ever. And they're like that too. It's usually mutual. If an argument is that bad, usually what happens is both parties, or all involved parties, if it's more than two people, are like, well, don't talk to me again, don't even think of me, basically. And everyone's like, okay, whatever. They throw their hands up and they wander off. Now let's say some months later, one of those people in that group, whether it's two people or more, says, oh, well, I'm sorry, and, I'd like to talk to you and stuff, and sort of trying to smush things over. What's the proper response? The proper response is to do nothing at all. No, in such a situation, if someone has wronged you to the point where it's, been considerably consequential on your mental health, or it could have endangered your career or something like that, proper response, don't engage them at all, just completely ignore them. That's the best kind of vengeance, by the way. The best kind of vengeance is to not think about the other person in any way, shape, or form. Not harming someone, going after them, saying, oh, haha, I'm going to get you, I'm going to call your employer and prank call them and stuff and say you're, like, smoking crack. No, that's petty stuff, and it can get you in trouble, too. It's like, you get the worst of that arrangement. They get inconvenienced a little bit, you get thrown in a jail cell. Fuck yourself, that's crazy. No, the best thing to do is just to ghost them completely out of your mind. Don't even think of them. They're inconsequential. Because if they wanted to be of consequence in your life, they wouldn't have acted that way. And this is for like really severe occasions. Again, this isn't just for, well, they insulted you or something. Okay, people insult people all the time. Friends do that to each other jokingly on a daily basis. Oh, you piece of shit. Ha ha ha. Oh, you fucking asshole. And it's in jest and stuff. And it's like, you know, you can have a million arguments with a person and still be friendly with them, or in a relationship, or they're still part of your family, or you still have to work with them at work or something. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's sort of like an episode of The Office. Non-stop one-liners and zingers. But, you know, at the end of the day, it might annoy you sometimes, but it's actually, retrospect, it's more funny than anything else. But then there are those affronts that go well beyond that and shouldn't be forgiven. And some people have more of a problem with being forgiving than they do with being vengeful, including myself. Generally speaking, even for significant abuses aimed towards me, my initial reaction is just to go with the flow. And if the person's like, well, I'm sorry, I'm like, okay, well, you know, whatever, you know, how are you? But over time, I've had to learn to cope with the fact that I have that sort of too benevolent attitude at times. Like, honestly, but I cool down so quickly. I'm quick to anger in some situations, but I tend to cool down very quickly. Like, within 10 minutes, I'm like, you know, why was I even mad? For some people, they have to sleep on it. I think Rogan actually literally in the Tim Pool interview the other day was talking about this in regards to like people bullying online and getting violent and stuff. For me, it's not even I have to sleep on it. For me, it's 10, 15 minutes later, I feel fine. I pace around a little. If I'm really, really angry, I'll pace around and punch a pillow or something. That's basically the end-all be-all. Blow off that steam very quickly. You know, maybe shout a few times, and then you feel foolish for doing it because you're like, oh my god, I wish I could see myself and how I look irate right now, and you're like, oh, then you chuckle about it. But again, there are some situations where someone shouldn't be forgiven. And as far as the spiritual side of this, beyond the philosophy and more of the pragmatic psychological side, on the spiritual side, it's basically the same thing. I don't believe, for example, in the concept of eternal punishment. I don't believe there's any punishment after death. I don't believe in hell or purgatory or anything like that in any real meaningful way. That being said, there are punishments for our actions in the more temporal sense. And one of those things can be we alienate those that we then realize we shouldn't have alienated. and this goes in both directions. There'll be times when you say something that you really regret and you never talk to a person again. You're like, well, fuck, you know, that's going to sting for a long time. And then there are going to be cases where people do it to you. It's almost inevitable that that'll happen multiple times in your life on both ends. And you just have to deal with that. That's why you should make a measured response. That's why when someone has really pissed you off, instead of going off the deep end and potentially fucking yourself in the process by trying to destroy someone or saying things in anger that you might regret, take a step back. Especially like in this day and age, most of their interactions are online. It's way easier to take a cool down period if you're online. It's like, take 5 minutes, put your device down, and go have a coffee or eat some grapes or something, then come back and respond to what's pissed you off. Take a couple minutes. It doesn't have to be instantaneous contact. That'd be a little bit of advice that some people should definitely consider taking more in their lives. But vengefulness has its place. In some cases, it's totally appropriate. Not vengeful. So most people, they think of vengeance and they think of, well, I'm going to strike back out at this person. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about simply not interacting, not forgiving actively, letting the person stew, let them deal with the fact that they've alienated you, and in that fact, the only reason that the vengeance involved would even be meaningful is if they are repentant, if they're regretting what they've done. And so let them keep regretting it for the rest of their lives, or whatever period you feel appropriate. That's about all. Peace out.